Okay. Brother Lim is saying if there are questions. Okay. If there are any questions, inshallah, we can look at them. Sorry? I had. Don't worry, go ahead. Thank you.
First question. Whether the modern mujtahid, for example, Dr. Yusuf Qardawi, Dr. Wabah Zahiri, just give the example, when he did ijtihad on new issue especially, using specific mazhab methodology, or they combine it. And the problem is, for example, Supervisor may give a ijtihad on certain issue which for the Arab country, and in Malaysia also they apply the same ijtihad which is up to the intent that is good for the Arab country. That's I want to know whether they're using the specific methodology. Okay, second question is how to solve the problem when mujtahid did not have sufficient knowledge, especially on the new issue like in medicine, in science, where I believe most mujtahid have enough or sufficient knowledge in fiqh or related to fiqh. Okay, the third question is, I see, especially I talk about Malaysia situation, certain ustads apply the classic fiqh book to today's situation, like for example income tax, real property gain tax, where they say it's haram because applying the classic book of fiqh. What's your opinion on that?
The last question again.
The ustaz now is using the classic book of fiqh, applying that fiqh to the modern situation, like the income tax or real property gain tax, which they say haram because this classic book text said it's haram.
Okay. Firstly, about modern mujtahids. Mujtahids were usually classified into two. They had what they call the mutlaq mujtahid, the absolute ones. Those were like your encyclopedias, Shafi, Maliki, and those ones who were good at nearly everything. What you have today, for many actually of the madhabs, they had mujtahid muqayyid. These were mujtahids in specific fields. So you find somebody who is a mujtahid in this particular area, or a mujtahid in that particular area. So what you have is, when a person has studied usul and the methodology of his school, or other schools also, has studied all the relevant hadith and verses of the Quran related to a particular topic, the past fatwas given by other scholars on that topic, such a scholar becomes a mujtahid muqayyid, qualified to give ijtihad in that specific field. So today you have people who give fatwas on various specific issues, and giving new fatwa on cloning, on organ transplant, in a lot of the biomedical areas, in Islamic finance, takaful. These are new areas, sukuk. These are new instruments in Islamic finance that you don't find in the Quran or the Sunnah. So new ijtihad required, and new ones keep coming up. So what you have therefore is people who, yes, they are mujtahids, they are qualified in that field. However, because it's an individual effort, the point you made earlier on, the mujtahid may not have sufficient knowledge of a particular field. So you may be very good in Sharia, but you're not good with medicine. Okay? And you want to give fatwa on women's monthly periods. This requires a gynecologist or obstetrician, somebody who he knows that area better. So what the scholars do is they have fatwa councils. They form a group where you've got scholars of Usul and Maqasid, but they also invite specialists of various fields there. So for example, in Islamic finance, What they have is a group of scholars who are part of, say, AOFI, the Accounting and Auditing Organization of Islamic Financial Institutions, or something like that, based in Bahrain. They have their own fatwa councils of, I think, 18 or 20 scholars. But these are scholars who, some of them are well grounded in conventional economics. Yeah. Some of them have their PhDs in finance, in banking, in these areas, so they know what they are talking about. And where they need a specialist, he may even be a non-Muslim. But where they need a specialist to advise them what exactly is going on, they will bring that. So it becomes like a shura, a consultative group. They would have people who are maybe ministers or central bank managers who are part, or governors who are part of that. Why? Because you don't want to just give a fatwa. If it's supposed to be implemented, you would want people who are in government saying, yes, we can do that one, or no, we can't, so you don't waste your time. So what they are doing and trying to do better is to form groups. You know, this ta'awanu ala al-birr wa taqwa, to get people of different qualifications who will help bring together what would be the qualifications of a mujtahid. So in that group, the person who knows the hadith related to the topic, the person who knows the usul and the qawaid and the this and that, the person who knows impact assessment, risk assessment, whatever they feel would be important becomes a part of that group. So usually they will find that as being more reliable than just one person giving a fatwa. However, sometimes scholars like Ardawi, like Bin Bayya, like a number of these usuli scholars, sometimes may not agree with the conclusion of a group. And they honestly don't want to just go with the majority. Why? Because they fear Allah. And they would give their own reasons why they feel a particular opinion is stronger. Or sometimes they cannot wait for a group to meet. Because when you are dealing with a group, you know, as they say, to travel far, you go with others. But you travel fast, you go alone. If you're going to do a thing with a group, you're going to go very slowly. So for some scholars, they feel waiting for everybody to be on the same page can waste a lot of time. So sometimes, if they feel competent enough, they are ready to start giving their own opinion. Sometimes this is their fatwa, and if somebody has a better opinion, they bring it and they have no problem changing their opinion. You know, so some time ago, for example, in a discussion, according to Qardawi, this was over 20 years ago, somebody asked a question, a woman who embraces Islam, but her husband is still a non-Muslim, what happens to that marriage? Hassan al-Turabi of Sudan said the marriage still stands. All the other scholars disagreed with him. It was about 20 years later when Qardawi was given the same question in a particular context that he had to go and research that topic even further. And he put the answer in his book, Fi Fiqh al-Aqalliyat, on fiqh of Muslim minorities. And he looked at the fatwa given by Ibn Qayyim al-Jawzi in his book, Ahkam Ahl al-Dhimma, where Ibn Qayyim said there were 9 different opinions on that topic. And of all the opinions, opinion 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 said there has to be divorce. But opinion number 6, 7, 8, and 9 said they stay together. You know. And the evidence, according to Ibn Qayyim, was, the stronger one was they stayed together, though Ibn Taymiyyah's opinion was they don't have sexual intercourse. However, the other opinion, number 7, 8, and 9, which Qardawi felt was equally strong, and probably stronger because of the backing by fatwa by Umar bin Khattab and the Caliph Ali during his time, was that they stayed together if it was not harmful to the woman, etc., and that was the practice of the Sahaba at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. So Qardawi gave one fatwa before and condemned another one, but they're all scholars, they keep learning. They never stop getting curious. And they changed their fatwa. So I'm just saying that yes, the individual opinions, if they probably sat down to analyze, they probably would have gotten an answer much earlier. So usually the group is more reliable, but then truth is not by democracy. Sometimes it's the minority that is right, and it takes time for the majority to agree with the minority. The question of locality, it is important that the scholars of a locality decide based on what's best for their locality, not taking the fatwa that applies to another place. If what applies to another place also applies here, no problem. Medicine for malaria here may also work in Nigeria. But before you conclude, you need to be sure. Yeah. So you do need local scholars to assess the fatwa, assess their circumstance, and decide whether it's actually applicable or not. When it comes to what madhab do contemporary scholars use, because what you have in many societies, particularly with Muslim minorities, you go to Australia or England or America, you got Hanafis there, you got Shafis there, you got Malikis there, you got everybody there. What do they use? What they actually use to a very great extent is they go with Hanafi fiqh on issues to do with Muslim minorities. They use the Hanafi equations. The other thing they do a lot is to really just ask themselves which of the opinions is more in line with maqasid in this society. Yeah. And so when Qardawi is giving an answer, he is not always going with a Shafi answer or with a Hanafi answer. Sometimes he goes Maliki, sometimes he goes this, sometimes he goes that. But it's important to find out what's the society he is answering the question to. If he says in this society riba is permissible, don't say he's talking to your society. Yeah, that's why it's good to read the fatwa and read why he answered it in that context. And why certain Imam al-Juwayni considered riba permissible in certain contexts. And this we didn't have time to discuss. When a society gets into haja, it is treated as a darura. Yeah, so they've got reasons for that. And we've answered this one, that yes, no individual has the encyclopedic knowledge to handle everything. And so what they do is get a group of specialists in that area to advise. Of course, there's a problem using classical fatwas for today. Why? Because those mujtahid imams whose opinion we take would sometimes change their fatwa the moment they change place. I mean, take for example, between the time of the Prophet ﷺ and the time of Umar bin Khattab, how many fatwas did Umar change? Why? Because society had changed just within 12 years. Abu Bakr was a caliph for just over 2 years, and Umar was caliph for 10 years. But basically within 10 years from the time of the Prophet ﷺ, a lot of fatwa, society had changed. But also a lot had changed between the time of Umar and his grandson, Umar bin Abdul Aziz. And new fatwas. The doors of ijtihad are always open. And it's a fardu kifaya, it never stops. It just has to be done by people who are qualified. And sometimes we do a disservice to the same scholars we say we are following. Why? Because if they lived in your society, they would have used their same equations or sometimes other equations to achieve maqasid that moves the ummah forward. We are not to just blindly follow the fatwa. You know, as we drew that tree diagram, yeah, the trees and the leaves and the fruit, they change with the seasons. But you'll always use the tools of Usul al Fiqh and Maqasid to extract rulings again from the Quran and the Sunnah for your new society. The Quran and Sunnah is permanent. The equations are basically permanent. They may be modified within a school and moved between one school and the other, but at least there's a consistent methodology that is used for extracting rulings for changing society. Fiqh is human effort. Fatwas are human effort. And humans, we are liable to make mistakes. That's why in fiqh you have different opinions. But the Quran and Sunnah is permanent for all time and all place. And so we should always look at the tools, make sure we get the scholars who are qualified to extract rulings for our society. And the next society will change its own rulings. Our loyalty is to the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, using the methodology, not necessarily the fatwas, but using the methodology of our scholars and the Salaf Saleh. So the minhaj and methodology of extracting rulings is what we continue to follow. And we always refer back to the Quran, the Sunnah, and the methodology of our earliest generation to look at what's the new fruit that's in line with the maqasid that applies to our reality or context today. So it's not about fatwa that was given by somebody in Baghdad automatically would be the same fatwa that will apply in Egypt or somewhere else in Africa or Europe. So really, while sometimes an old fatwa may be relevant, it's not automatically relevant. It's really to ask, does it achieve the maqasid of Sharia, the objectives of Sharia in that context? If it doesn't, then it's either to look for another opinion that achieves the objectives, and if none of the opinions achieve the objectives, then the need for fresh ijtihad by qualified scholars, preferably a group, but not necessarily, or by specialists in that area, to come up with solutions for their time and place. They may make mistakes. They're human. But the Prophet ﷺ said, when such mistakes are made, the scholar concerned gets 1 reward. And if he is right, he gets 2 rewards. At least he tried. Wallahu alam.